video you were talking
Okay.
about.
Yeah. While we're waiting, here's the agenda for today. We're waiting for our first guest speaker. That's Bob Hendricks. Bob has recently become one of our CCL Texas State coordinators, and he's going to be talking about the budget reconciliation process and current status update on that. That's Bob's specialty. He really stays tuned in and up to date on exactly what's happening in Washington. And then our second guest speaker today is going to be Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner Adrian Garcia, and talking about what we can do here in Harris County for greenhouse gas emission reduction. Then we'll go into our monthly calling campaign that Mark will assist us with. Then we're going to talk more about contacting President Biden, which is a new high priority for us to do. And then we're going to go into our lever breakout sessions, and we're doing something different today as far as breakout sessions. Usually we break out by each individual lever and go through a status and talk about plans with those volunteers that are helping out. But today we're going to have two specific breakout rooms. One, if you're a member of Congress, congressman, congresswoman is a Democrat, and a second one, if your congressperson is a Republican, in preparation for our lobby day events. Then we'll get into some other miscellaneous topics that I always cover, current events and so on. And time permitting, we'll go through our usual status reports. And that's the agenda for today. So again, we're just waiting a few more minutes here for Bob Hendricks to join us. And if he doesn't join, we'll go to our backup plan and talk about that separately.
While we're waiting, can I say something real quick?
Please go ahead.
My name is Jackie Griggs. I live in Pearland, but I've been interested in climate lobbying for a long time. I've been a member of CCL through my church, actually. And anyway, this is my first meeting I've ever tuned into to this group. I'm actually doing another conference today, so I can't stay for the whole meeting, but I just wanted to let y'all know who I am. My job is I'm a certified nurse midwife, and I own a birth center in Houston and another one in Beaumont. And climate agenda has been something I've been focused on my whole life. And so that's just want to let y'all know who I am.
Thank you so much for that, Jackie. I really appreciate it. And, you know, thank you for introducing yourself. And while we have time, why don't we go through other introductions as well? Specifically our newer members. Maybe Morgan, if you want to speak a few words to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I can introduce myself too. My name's Morgan Teen. I just recently moved to Houston from Edmonton, Alberta. My background is in environmental engineering. I actually work for Dow Chemical. My focus area is on expanding Dow's use of renewable energy. I'm very passionate about climate-related issues, which I know might seem counterintuitive working for Dow, but you know, infiltrate from the inside out. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here today and kind of put my climate energy to use in a different capacity as well. I've been looking for a volunteer opportunity as well as focusing on it professionally. So nice to meet you all.
And thank you so much, Morgan, for joining us and for the intro. And I just wanted to mention very quickly that because we live here in Houston, actually many of our members are employed or retired now from oil and gas industry jobs. Just myself, for example, retired from ExxonMobil, worked for Exxon quite a long time ago. I'm actually still working, but just not in the oil and gas industry any longer. And we have others as well. So welcome. Let's see, another new member, I think, Max Galvin. Max, is this your first meeting? And would you like to introduce yourself?
So I think it's been a while since I've been to one of these meetings because it's always at a bad time for me. I've been kind of trying to go to the grass top ones, but anyway, so my name is Max Galvan. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a resident psychiatrist. I'm 2 years into my training. I've been more involved with like the Climate Psychiatry Alliance, but I've been trying to be more locally involved. And it always looks like y'all are doing things. I always see messages or emails from you, Mr. Garfunkel. So I'm hoping to be more involved as much as I can.
Thank you so much for joining. And let's see, who else did I miss among new members? Okay, I hope we didn't miss anyone. How about Jenny? Jenny, you're fairly new. If you want to come off mute and maybe just introduce yourself.
Yeah, sorry. I was actually sending Morgan an email just now, an invite to our Slack channel, because she asked me to send her that. But yes, I joined in August, so this is my second meeting. I came to the one last month, and last month I joined Dory on the chapter development team. So I've been helping her out with doing those calls to our new members and inviting them formally into our chapter, kind of emailing them details about future events and also some details about the teams that they could join if they're interested. So been happy to do that for the past month. And yeah, I guess my background, I used to work in oil and gas investment banking, actually, out of college. And so while there, I kind of became disillusioned with the industry. So eventually I ended up leaving, and now I'm planning to pursue law school.
Excellent. And thank you for joining us. I see a couple of other people, maybe Allison. Allison, is this your first meeting?
Yeah, it is my first meeting. I'm actually, I work in the oil and gas industry for a local EPC company, and we've newly formed a employee resource group on sustainability. And so that's definitely one of the things I want to get more involved with and try to just do what I can as a citizen to help improve things and learn more about the climate issues.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. And I see Nan. Nan, is this your first meeting?
I went to your conference.
Oh, okay, a while
You
ago.
had like what, 3 years ago?
Okay. Did you want
And
to
I've
introduce
been
yourself?
a fan, but not participating. And I do a lot of, I'm retired, and so I do a lot of climate activism and a lot of reading about the climate and go to meetings.
Well, very good.
And
Thank you.
the idea of throwing a question at Adrian Garcia got me intrigued, and so I worked up a question for him.
Very good. Did I miss anybody else? Anyone else that's new?
This is Gladys.
Hi, Gladys.
Hi, I joined about probably 3 weeks ago, and I've been to a couple of Zoom meetings, and I still feel that I'm trying to find my way on how to help. I'm in a courts group in the grass tops. So I've been doing some reading, and, you know, I talked to the court once, but I'm still not quite sure how I can actually practically help. As for my background, I'm a visual artist. I mean, I was in education years ago, but I've been a visual artist for 20 years. And I moved to Houston about, a year ago? Yeah.
Thank you, Gladys.
Yeah.
Anybody else that I may have missed? Okay, so it looks like our first guest has not joined. Not sure what happened, but we're going to go to our plan B. And so if you can see my screen, and John, can you just verify? Can you see my screen here?
Yes.
Perfect. So every week, if you go onto our CCL community website, there is a status update every week on new things that are going on and that are happening. And so what we'll do is we'll go to our plan B here, which is a video recording from Danny Richter. Danny is one of our CCL VPs in charge of government affairs, basically in Washington, D.C. He keeps extremely close tabs on what's going on. He talks to our congressmen and senators when things come up, when they have questions, when there's information we can help them with. And so what we'll do is we'll play this video. It's about a 4 or 5 minute video with the current status of where we are in a budget, the Senate budget reconciliation process, and the carbon fee. So I think in order for you to hear this, I have to change my sound setting, if I can remember how to do that.
Stop sharing.
I'm sorry?
Stop sharing.
Okay.
And then when you go to reshare, there's a box you click that says like enable sound.
Got it. Advanced sharing options.
Shouldn't be that. It's not that advanced.
No.
I thought it was just like when you click on share, I thought it was a little click box. It's like readily available.
Oh, I think there it is. Optimize for video clip. Okay. I think I'm there. I'm going to click on it and hopefully you'll be able to hear this.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another legislative update. I'm Danny Richter. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for Citizens Climate Lobby. I want to begin this update with a couple of quotes. Here's the first quote. 13 grams of salt, 425 grams of water, 30 to 75 grams sourdough starter, depending on ambient temperature and available rise time, 500 grams flour. That is the basic recipe for all of the loaves of bread I bake. Here's another quote. Depending on how it is structured, a tax on carbon pollution could be the most powerful policy enacted by the United States to tackle climate change. Now, you're probably saying, yeah, Danny, that's the basic recipe for ambitious climate policies. Nice analogy, giant nerd. What scientist or economist did you get to say that? Well, actually, that was the New York Times reporting on Friday, September 24th in an article titled, Democrats Consider Adding Carbon Tax to Budget Bill. In that same article, you have this. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, confirmed that the Senate Majority Leader had asked him to craft legislation that would put a price on carbon emissions with some kind of quote unquote carbon dividend. Guys, this is huge. We're talking about the Majority Leader of the Senate, and we're talking about the chairman of the Finance Committee. This is like me saying that I've bought the largest industrial mixer and the largest industrial oven you have ever seen, and I'm going to start shipping bread to all of you. And the presidents of the companies making the ovens and the mixers were saying, yep, we're going to do this. Stated differently, the policy we've been working on for more than 10 years is being reported on in one of the most prominent newspapers in our country, with confirmation that the major players in the Senate are working on putting the policy together. So this is why this is a really big deal. Even though we haven't seen the Senate's legislative language for this package as we had hoped to on September 15th, the last few weeks have brought the carbon pricing conversation fully out into the open in pieces like this in the New York Times, as well as in other outlets, and that's a great place to be. But Danny, you say, wasn't there a concerning kerfuffle amongst House Democrats last week? Doesn't that mean that all hope has left the world? Well, it is true that they suspended the laws of time and space in the House, and it is true that they did not reach a deal. Let me explain. Earlier this year, a deal was struck between House moderates and progressives, and a rule was passed that the House would vote on the joint bipartisan infrastructure bill that already passed the Senate, as well as the House version of a budget reconciliation package. That rule permitting a vote was set to expire on Thursday, September 30th. At the end of Thursday, they didn't have a deal, so they just didn't adjourn the session. So technically, last Friday, October 1st, was in the House still Thursday, September 30th. Those poor House representatives and their staff lost a whole day of the year. In the end, even that 48-hour day was not enough to reach a deal. And so the new deadline, there's been a new rule passed, that's been set for Halloween, when I'm sure that nothing otherworldly bending the laws of nature can possibly happen. So for us as climate activists trying to help Congress accomplish big things on climate, the delay is frustrating. But when you get right down to it, both moderates and progressives agree that the worst case is that Congress does nothing. So while I'd rather have not had this delay, I still think that a reconciliation bill stands a very good chance of happening. So now what can you do? Keep doing what you're doing. Our policy priority is front and center in the national discussion, and that people with their hands on the levers of power are thinking about it, and they want to do it. It's still important to keep up our supportive grassroots advocacy in the local media, social media, and in their communities, showing support for this policy and encouraging members of Congress to keep moving forward on it. You've already done a tremendous job of this year. But when things are starting to roll our way, that's not the time to stop pushing. This is the time to keep going forward, doing what you've been doing so well. So let's keep it up for at least a little bit longer. Thank you for all you've done, and thanks for listening.
Excellent. All right. Do we have any discussion, any questions on what we just listened to?
Well, Joe, if you let me share, I can go over some of the details of the reconciliation bill that I put together for my students. I was not planning on presenting them today, but I can go over what I know, and you guys jump in and share if you have more that you know.
Yep. I think you have permission now, John. Why don't you try it?
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay. So let me make sure. All right. So you guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So there is a bill in the Senate that, if passed in its current form, would be the largest bill that the Senate has ever passed. It has a price tag of $3.5 trillion. And there's a bunch of different stuff in there. And so I'm going to briefly go over the other stuff that's in the bill, because that is all in our representatives and senators' minds, in addition to the climate measures. So one program that is in that bill is a family tax credit, where for families that make less than $150,000, they get a monthly check in the mail per kid. So kids who are 5 and younger, $300. Kids who are 5 and older, $250. That program costs about $556 billion out of this bill. There's massive spending for education. And by the way, you guys put questions in the chat, and if we have time before Commissioner Garcia joins us, I'll try to answer them. There's massive funding for education to provide universal pre-K, to provide tax credits to help pay for daycare, universal community college, all kinds of job training, building new schools, school nutrition, lots of spending there. And then about 635-ish billion for climate. I don't have a hard number there because this stuff is largely still being discussed. There's $150 billion that would go towards a clean electricity payment program. The way that would work is if an energy provider increases the amount of renewable energy that they provide by 4% annually, they get a tax rebate. And if they do not increase by 4% annually, they get a tax penalty. There's $9 billion for home energy improvements in terms of insulation and increasing energy efficiency. $9 billion for home electrification to get away from gas as an energy source and towards renewable energy sources. $13.5 billion to electrify the federal fleet of vehicles. $5 billion for heavy duty vehicle electrification. So things like trash trucks, school buses, that stuff. $17.5 billion for decarbonizing federal buildings and vehicles. A massive green bank that would give out low interest loans to companies who are seeking to become more sustainable. $7.5 billion for small scale community solar, like what Dory Wolf is doing in Sunnyside with that community-based solar plant. $135 billion for forestry improvements and addressing forest fires. I believe the Civilian Climate Corps, which is a plan to employ lots of young people to go out and improve national parks and various other sustainability efforts. That's part of that. And then there are tax cuts for aviation to try to encourage them to become more fuel efficient. And then possibly a methane and/or carbon tax. And there's some debate around what to do with that carbon tax. They would like to use some of the funding from a carbon tax to pay for this massive bill, but they also want to return some of that in the form of a dividend. And those details are not yet worked out in terms of what would you do with a carbon tax or a methane tax if you were to implement them. Aside from that, there's spending for healthcare that is to go towards low-income families, but also Medicare expansion so that Medicare includes dental, vision, and healthcare. And there's $330 billion to go towards affordable housing to address the rising costs of housing. So in a very quick nutshell, that is what is in a current version of the bill that may change. Does anybody have any questions about what is in this bill or comments about what you think?
Can you put a link to that in the?
What I'm going to do is put a link to my website that I use for my students, because that's where this information is. So you don't have homework, but you can look at it for information if you would like.
Don, I've got a question. That one little line that says methane and or carbon tax, is that the spot where we're talking about the carbon price that we want to put in?
Yes, and
that very, very cleverly hides the magnitude of what it is that we're talking about.
let me get, this is not for the, this is not for, this was not intended for CCL members. This was for my students, and I was listing a huge list of things. And so I'm not trying to minimize that. It's just that they're dealing a lot with the numbers, and I don't have a number for that. So I put it at the bottom of the list.
John, I've got a question. I mean, you know, Senator Manchin has been very vocal in his opposition to a $3.5 billion price tag. What do you foresee happening, you know, in terms of potentially changing this bill to reach some sort of compromise? I mean, I know that's a hard question to answer, but I mean, it seems to me like in its current form, it's probably not going to pass.
I would agree with that. Both Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema want to see the bill decreased in size. Senator Manchin put a ceiling at 1.5 trillion. Senator Sinema has not put a ceiling on it, or has not publicly put out a number. There's tension there because Senator Manchin would like to decrease some of the climate measures. Senator Sinema would not. Climate is an important issue for her. And so in terms of Senate Democrat attempts to get both of them on board, it's hard to satisfy those two senators with very different goals. The good news for us in terms of climate, and I don't know if good news is even the right word, is that Senator Manchin would like to see cuts in other areas, not just climate. He'd like to see cuts in the family tax credits and maybe in the Medicare. So it wouldn't all come from climate for Senator Manchin. The big thing that he wants is he wants the bill to be friendly towards natural gas and coal, and he wants to make sure that carbon capture is heavily rewarded. And so I could see him for the clean electricity payment program trying to decrease the penalty for companies that cannot become more sustainable at the pace of 4% annually. A lot of the other funding that's in here in terms of investing in different things, he's happy with. He just wants to make sure that it's not too harsh in terms of penalties for coal and natural gas.
And then there's a question from Jack in the chat window. John, I'm not sure if you saw that. I'll just read it. If the carbon fee and dividend does not make it into this bill, what does that mean? I'm telling all my friends and family, but want to avoid pressuring them to call their congressman if they are not comfortable yet. And it took me some time to learn and accept it myself.
That is a great question, Jack. I don't know what the CCL position will be if there's no carbon price in there. Even if there's not a carbon price, this is a lot of funding put towards sustainability efforts. And you know, I don't know if CCL will still call for us to advocate full-throatedly or not. But for me, I personally would support it even without a carbon tax, just because it's what we got. And I'd rather get this as opposed to nothing.
Yeah, so this is Morgan. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, John. I have read a lot of, I guess, negative press on the clean electricity payment program, and just being actively engaged in the renewable energy space, I know that the way that it's written right now, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for gaming the system from electricity providers because of that kind of one-time extremely high payment compared to the cost of renewable energy, and kind of the less like the fee that you have to pay actually isn't that much of a penalty when you look at kind of the upside incentive. And so I've heard that it kind of opens the door for electricity providers to kind of trade assets amongst them to continuously get that kind of one-time bulk payment, and like not increase renewable capacity overall as much as it maybe would expect. And I don't know, it's just interesting. The details that they release right now seems like there's a lot of opportunity for arbitrage, but perhaps as they kind of refine that program a bit, it'll make more sense. But
I agree that enforcement is difficult in terms of that 4% annual growth in renewable sources of energy. And, I don't know what the enforcement measure is. I hope it's robust, because you're right that they will try to game that system in any way they can if they think that it increases profits.
The next question in the chat is from Marco. And so Marco said, when calling our Congress people, should we? And then Marco provided 4 choices here, right? 4 options, A, B, C, and D. And I'm going to try to answer this one myself. I believe the correct answer is actually option letter D at the very end. They're not mentioning the dividend at all. And I'm basing this answer based on what I've heard again from a previous recording by CCL Vice President Danny Richter. Our emphasis at this point is to get a carbon tax passed, or at least in discussion. And then for follow-on negotiations and discussions, there'll be more discussion about what the carbon dividend actually should be.
And to add on to that, I agree with in terms of our calls that, yes, just advocate for a carbon tax, keep it simple. And then by the time we get to lobby meetings in November, in the week of November 15th, hopefully we've got some clarity around what ends up in this Senate bill.
Awesome, thanks.
And then next, Jack has some additional comments. Jack, do you want to just verbally read that out? What you had in mind with that? You might be on mute. I'll read it here. Go ahead. If you're there, go ahead.
There's a comment. Do I have in front of me? Just it could be just as effective to have a good carbon price as any other climate measures. I know I come from a lot of conservative circles. Not that that's better or anything. Just I know a lot of people are concerned about the high spending and debt, and a lot of people don't support a lot of the high spending. And this is not, people I talk with, family in Pennsylvania, people have mentioned this where I do business in West Texas. And so just in terms of what can get broad support and be bipartisan, I think having a carbon mechanism would get a lot of these things done automatically. And that's been one of the points why CCL has supported this. So just, and the point of CCL talks about listening to people. And so this is one of the things I've heard, this is just my opinion. So just something to keep in mind and an ear open, what would be effective to try to get bipartisan support.
I think that there's 2 obstacles to a carbon pricing in replacement of a lot of these. Well, actually, there's 3 obstacles. The first is concerns about the popularity of carbon pricing. I heard Senator Wyden of Oregon speak about a week ago about how carbon pricing has failed in Washington state, a very liberal, climate conscious state, when it's been on the ballots there. Notably, that was not a carbon dividend, it was just a carbon price. And the money kind of went to like nebulous causes, and that's why I think it failed there. And that nationally, I think carbon pricing would be popular with paired with a dividend. But there's concern among Senate Democrats that it has failed when it's been on the ballot elsewhere. The second obstacle to carbon pricing replacing these is Joe Manchin from West Virginia, because he's concerned that carbon pricing will be devastating to his state's economy, that it moves us away too quickly from coal and natural gas, and would be bad for him. And then the third one, in terms of a revenue neutral carbon dividend, has to do with like complex Senate rules. And in order to pass a bill with just 51 votes as opposed to 60, you have to involve spending that would either spending or revenue changes that would impact the national debt. And so if you just do it and it's revenue neutral, it's not clear that you can do that with 51 votes instead of 60.
The next question is from Kat. The question is, are border adjustments included in this bill that's currently being looked at in Congress? I'm going to take a stab at this, and John, please add anything else. So this is a very good question. And this was a very curious thing that happened about a month ago, I believe, or maybe it's almost a month and a half or 2 months ago, where the very first indication that we saw in the news that became publicly available was that the Congress was trying to add a border adjustment, but yet there was no mention about adding a carbon tax. And so based on our knowledge of how all of these pieces fit together, it doesn't seem logical that you could have a border adjustment without a carbon tax. And that's why I was very curious, and we didn't exactly know what was happening. So we know it was put out there. John, I don't know if it's actually currently in what's being discussed now. Do you have any details on that?
It is currently in there in some form, but I don't know the details of it. So yeah, I don't have anything to add to what you were saying.
I was just trying to double check because like you said, I remember it being in there and then all of a sudden it kind of just like faded away. So I wasn't sure if they compromised by letting go of that or not, but apparently not. So that's good.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about letting go. So
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then there's some good feedback here from Nan. I don't think this is a question, it's just feedback. She says here, whether carbon price law is passed this year or not, CCL has already accomplished a lot. And almost everyone is expecting it to be passed and getting ready for it. So thank you for that feedback, Nan.
Yeah.
All right, has our second guest arrived? I don't think I've seen him.
Surely we're not going to strike out today.
All right, so why don't we continue on? Any additional questions on this topic, or if not, we'll just continue with our agenda.
I'll just comment on what John had said, that the fear that the carbon fee and dividend would be being revenue neutral wouldn't fit into reconciliation. I thought they'd already decided that they were really two separate things. The carbon fee is the carbon fee, and there's no indication of what you'd use it for, and so that definitely would affect revenue. And then the dividend is something you choose to spend, and the fact that the two happen to be the same number is just coincidental.
I think you're right that there's some like political kind of jiggering that you can do that makes it to where like, oh, no, these are two separate things, and that they're not connected, and then you can get it in there.
All right, so next up on our agenda, I'm sharing my screen again, is our monthly calling campaign. And Mark, you're going to lead us through this. And in preparation for that, let me put a couple of links here in the chat window so that we're all set and ready to actually do this. The first link I put in is the web link for everyone to go to. So it'll provide you with the information, the details on what phone numbers to call and what the suggested message is and how all that works. And we're going to go directly now into the monthly calling campaign. And then immediately after that, there's one other extremely important topic, and that's to go ahead and send another message to President Biden that we do want a carbon tax. And I've placed the link in there. So, but now we'll focus on the monthly calling campaign. And Mark, please go ahead and jump right in.
Thank you, Joe. Welcome, everybody. Some of you who are new may not be familiar with it. First of all, we do have a reminder from the National Citizens Climate Lobby Organization if we sign up for the monthly calling campaign. So they will send you an email once a month saying, hey, it's time to call your Congress people. And so that first link on your screen there, monthly calling campaign, that's how you would join that. That's important because we want to have consistent showing to our congresspersons that, hey, there's people out here, ordinary citizens, who want something done about the climate. Secondly, and what we're going to do today is that second link. If you don't have your representative and senator's phone numbers handy, you can click on that cclusa.org/call and put in your zip code, and that will bring up contact information for both senators and then your representative. So I'm going to demonstrate here. Hopefully everybody, if you have your phone handy, you can do this while I'm doing it. If you don't, be glad to demonstrate here. So the first one that came up for me was Senator Cornyn, and there was actually a script, and I'll just follow the script. I'm probably going to get a voicemail.
Hello, this is Senator John Cornyn. Thanks for calling my Washington, D.C. office. For general information regarding my office locations and operating hours, please press 1. To leave a comment regarding current issues of interest, please press 2. If you'd like to speak directly, I appreciate you taking the time to make your views known on current policy issues of interest to you. Please leave your comment as well as your local zip code after the tone. Thank you and have a great day.
Hello, Senator Cornyn. My name's Mark Harrinan. I live in zip code 77080 in Houston. Thank you for all you're doing for us in Congress, in the Senate. And I'm specifically calling to urge you to enact a federal carbon price so that US businesses can avoid paying European tariff that's recently been enacted, and also remain internationally competitive. Thank you for listening to this concern. That's it. And so I'm going to go on to Senator Cruz. I'm going to follow that same script with him.
Actually, let me step in there, Mark, because Commissioner Garcia has just joined us. And so I think we'll move on to our discussion with him and then come back to our calling efforts.
All right.
Excellent. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Hi, Commissioner Garcia. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you. Glad to be with you.
So for those of you who aren't familiar, Commissioner Garcia is a native Houstonian who grew up in Houston's North Side and has been involved in public service his entire adult life. He served as a police officer for 23 years and as an elected official has served as a Houston City Council member, Mayor Pro Tem, and Harris County Sheriff. He now represents Harris County Precinct 2 on the Harris County Commissioner's Court, and we are very glad to have you with us today. The first question that we have for you is, we know that Harris County is currently working to hire someone to head the new Office of Sustainability. Can you give us the latest on those efforts? And then what are the next steps upon hiring somebody there? Do they involve some type of climate action and resiliency plan, or what are your hopes for that position?
Yes, John, thank you. And thank you all for allowing me to share a few minutes of my time with you. And I just say, let me just say that I appreciate, respect, admire, and welcome your interest in our climate and in our environment and all that we can do to make it better and greener. So thank you so very much. John, to your question, the process of the office is moving right along. I know that we have established the framework for the Office of Sustainability, and we have not yet received our final selection. But obviously, we want to make sure that Harris County remains the energy capital of the world. However, we want it to remain the energy capital of green energy and clean power. And so that will be the focus. And so I'm excited about where we've moved. And let me just say, for those of you who may not be aware, the introduction that John provided with the fact that I'm the Commissioner of Precinct 2, if you can see my logo here, it shows bridges and a tugboat and the San Jacinto Monument. my precinct is on the east side of Harris County. That represents the Port of Houston and the refinery community. So this is very important to me. In fact, since taking office, I've led the charge on many fronts. First, by providing our pollution control department with a budget it had never had before. Secondly, we have, I took on the industry when it's had mishaps like the infamous ITC fire, and it's led into a collaboration with ACC, TCC, and ECMA, so that they provided me $1 million that has resulted in us purchasing handheld, mobile, and permanent air monitors, along with a collaboration with HARC, so that we could have an independent group of scientists, not industry professionals, not government professionals, but independent scientists that can guide us on when we have these chemical releases and these events related to the chemical industry, to help us better understand the true danger to our community. And so there's so much more. We're now embarking on a endeavor that I started almost on day one of taking this office, and that is to get us purchasing more green energy by establishing the process to attain those credits. And we're now on the cusp of going into another endeavor that will lead us to more solar rooftops in Harris County, along with some other initiatives. So I'm excited about the work we've done. Obviously, we've got a lot to do.
Thank you for that. Can the county commit to using 100% renewable power and electrifying the fleet?
Yeah. In fact, the first fleet that we established, and thank you for that question, the first fleet that we have fully converted is in our pollution control department, right? It would make sense. And I've purchased some electric vehicles for my precinct as well. And that's part of the plan of where we're on the verge of providing the transition process so that we can go to a full green fleet of electric vehicles in the county. So we're starting that process. We've already dipped our toe into the water, and now we're doing it. We're about to do it much more comprehensively, Judith. So thank you for that question.
So do you have a timetable for that transition?
Not soon enough. I mean, we're aggressively pushing this, and as long as we have the budget dollars and get the grants to help with that conversion, we're going to be doing it, but it is a real commitment.
Commissioner, you mentioned that the port is a big part of your district. And, Jim Tucker in the chat is pointing out that there are lots of sources of emissions that are not in Houston, but are in Harris County. So can you talk some about how much authority does Harris County have over emissions related to the port and the petrochemical industry there? And are there any steps you can take to reduce those countywide emissions that fall outside of Houston?
Yeah, when you introduced me, John, part of my background is that after serving for 23 years with the Houston Police Department, I decided to do something much more dangerous than police work, and that was seek elected office. And but I was honored that I got to serve alongside Mayor Bill White. And some may not remember, but Bill filed a lawsuit against the industry that was largely outside the city of Houston because of their failure to effectively control emission releases in our area. It was a lawsuit that was not well received at all, but it made an impact. So my commitment coming into this role was that, look, we need the jobs and the economy that the energy sector provides, but it's not permission to create harm to our environment, create harm to our community, to participate in environmental racism. So I'm proud of the work that I've done. I've been strong and bold and steadfast against the industry. I've brought them to the table. And so the work that we're doing is in part, and the authority that we have is that, number one, we have a real pollution control department today. We didn't have that previously. Secondly, we have given authority to the county attorney to file lawsuits as quickly as possible. Because to the authority question, regrettably, the attorney general, if the attorney general were to come in and file a lawsuit in front of the county, recognizing that the attorney general isn't doing it on our best interest, he's doing it for the industry's best interest, because ultimately that lawsuit won't go anywhere and ultimately it'll be dismissed, and he will have effectively taken the county's authority away from being able to file a suit against the bad actors. So we need a new governor. We need better leadership in the state to help us have the legislation that will better hold the industry accountable. And while we have the rules that we have, we are working on strategies of transparency with TCEQ. You probably are aware that I lit up, no pun intended, ERCOT, who I'd rather call ECOT because they're not reliable. And so we're taking the fight to them, John, quite frankly, on all fronts, with authority, with the minimal authority that we have, but we're taking the fight.
So
go ahead.
what can the county do to spur renewable energy usage?
Well, it is what we're doing right now, Judith. As I mentioned, that we're going to be announcing next week. In fact, I believe it's going to be on next week's agenda, that we'll have a new collaboration with leading energy firms to develop a broad-ranging strategy to procure green energy beyond our current agreement through power purchasing agreements with wind and solar farms. This partnership will also lay the foundation for beyond the meter solutions like rooftop and other rooftop solar and other energy efficiency initiatives. So I'm excited about where we're at. And let me make sure I couch this correctly. When I came in as county commissioner, I got appointed to a group called the P3, the Public Power Pool. It's a consortium of approximately 50 or more Texas counties that were combining their purchasing power to purchase our energy needs for the county. When I came in, the first thing I asked for was making sure that the RFQs would come in, would be written with a grade towards buying clean energy. And the Public Power Pool chose not to go along with me on that. So I made a vote at the Commissioner's Court to get out of the Public Power Pool. By getting out, we were able to start the process on a better purchasing approach for clean energy for the county. But then it led us into what I just mentioned, that not only will we be able to buy cleaner energy for our current needs, we're going to be able to start to set up the initiatives so that we can provide the enticements, the regulation and investment processes so that solar farms can look to Harris County much closer than they ever have before. So that all started by the fact that I was trying to get the power pool to include clean energy. They chose not to, so I said, I don't need you. And we need to take a better approach to this.
I know that we have some questions from others that I want us to get to, but we want to kind of pivot to national legislation since that is the focus of CCL. So what power do you feel like you have to influence national legislation? And then also CCL is focused on carbon pricing, which a lot of economists and environmental activists say is the most effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, where you put a tax on greenhouse gas emissions and return the funds raised from that tax back to American consumers. So do you support this type of carbon legislation? And then also, like, what power do you feel like you have to influence national policy?
Well, a good question. And first of all, I support where President Biden is working to lead us. And look, I'm already seeing the market. So President Biden is obviously recognizing what is already happening, and we need to encourage that more. Now, the power that I have, or the influence I have for this type of legislation, which I fully support, is that, and let me also just mention as an aside that this isn't my first rodeo, folks. I'm proud that since my first election for city council member, I've been proud to have received the endorsement of the Sierra Club in every one of my elections, probably with the exception of the sheriff's office, although I did try to make the county jail cleaner. So this is important to me. This has been a real commitment. I am a Sierra Club member. And so I do support the legislation, John, and the authority and the influence I do have is that I do employ a federal lobbyist for my office. And my lobbyist is focused on this and working with the administration to further it along. I'd like to see the EPA get all of its authority back and then more, and then making sure that we support the president on any other legislation that we can. And then I also work to take my work and encourage it amongst other Texas county commissioners. I try on a regular basis to engage them. And this is specifically the rural county commissioners who may have a different perspective on this. So I try to educate them and influence them and lobby them to stand with me on these fronts. And then my lobbyist is also partnered with the county's lobbyist as well. So again, we've got a real lobbying effort at the federal level that we've never had before. The precinct now has a voice at the federal level that we've never had before. So we're leveraging all of those resources and all that attention towards a lot of things, but specifically our climate change initiatives.
That's wonderful to hear. And Citizens Climate Lobby is going to be meeting with national offices very soon. And if you would be willing to endorse carbon pricing legislation, we have a mechanism to do so. The Sierra Club has endorsed it, but as you know, all politics is local and local endorsements carry a lot of weight. So I will follow up with your office there. And then also you mentioned education on the Harris County Commissioner's Court. There is a wonderful program that we like to use to kind of educate people called En-ROADS, developed by MIT, to kind of go through different legislation and what impact it would have. Would you be interested in some type of follow-up meeting to kind of go through different policies? And do you think Commissioner's Court? Yes.
Sure. And I will, I'm not sure if she's on the call today, but I have a phenomenal staff member, Kristen Lee, who is my—
I'm here, Commish.
Oh, there you are. Wonderful. Kristen is a rock star. She is a former assistant county attorney, and she is my environmental policy advisor. And she leads the charge on a lot of this work. So I'd be happy to meet them. And if my schedule doesn't permit for whatever reason, but I will make an effort to make sure it does. Kristen is a much better substitute than for me.
So we have a question from Nan. will you help Harris County enforce nature-based flood control? And Nan, feel free to jump in if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, actually Harris County supervises the flood control district, and the A&M had organized a workshop for public officials about all this and about nature-based flood risk management. And they say the consensus of their officials they organized to speak was that it's cheaper, it works better, and it's good, and it regenerates nature, which is good for our climate. In his new book, Paul Hawken, the title is Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in a Generation. And he says that we need to put regenerating life at the center of every decision. So Texas A&M had a workshop, and our current Harris County Planning Director was one of the speakers. And he said basically that all that stuff won't work in Texas, in Houston, because we got clay. And the lady who reported on it was Susan of Save Buffalo Bayou, and she said he all but laughed at the idea. So basically he's in, we're doing what we've been doing for a long time. We don't want to learn anything new is the attitude. Mr. Garcia, you and the other county commissioners passed a resolution, Harris Thrives, that supported nature-based flood control in 2019. And you supervised this, Mr. Hannon of the Director of Planning of Harris County Flood Control District. Will you meet with us about talking about how to convert Harris County to use more nature-based flood control?
Absolutely. And listen, I have been a fan of the Katy Prairie Conservancy, and I'm also proud to have the Armand Bayou as a part of my precinct. And listen, let me just say to the experiences that you've had with the flood control district, a lot of the framework here in Harris County is really a throwback to a different time in our history. And I don't take pride in firing people, but look, if folks don't get that there is a new court, there's a new political will, there is a new direction that we want to go in, then thank you for your service, and but the door awaits you. And so I make no bones about it. And I have a agenda that I think is a good and responsible one for our county. I think it will serve generations of the unborn in their future. And if there is one legacy that I want to leave as a result of my service, is to ensure that we protect our land, air, and water more than we ever have before, to ensure that new babies will have better air to breathe. If you can hear the rasp in my voice, it may be because I talk a lot, but I think it's also because of the stuff I breathe out here. So I don't want that for the next generation. I really don't. And so, and then I don't think we can concrete our way out of flooding. We have to be much more strategic. I've got a lot of buyout land that I'm acquiring because of our chronic flooding. I want to be strategic with the use of that land. And I think there's ways that we can use it wisely and strategically so that it doesn't just become green space, but becomes usable green space, but serving a purpose beyond or for flood mitigation. And I think it important to recognize that going back to Clay, when I first got elected to city council, and let me just tell you guys that I encourage my staff to have a WAI attitude, and that stands for wild as ideas. I don't want doing what we've always done. We've never done it that way. If there's issues and problems that we need to solve, we need to be creative and innovative and transformative. And so I really encourage my staff to think that way. And when I got elected to city council, someone planted an idea in my head that still is stuck in there. And that was that we could drop I-45 into a tunnel with a water conveyance system and an air purification system, and take all of that concrete of I-45 and turn it into usable green space. Ain't that a wild ass idea? And every engineer I spoke to laughed at me because I was asking for a study on it. And they kept saying, well, you know, the clay this and the clay that. Well, today we are talking about a tunnel system for our flood mitigation. So apparently we have no more clay. So I don't expect those answers. They're too easy, Nan, and my commitment is to push the envelope as far as the brain power we have, so that we can get some things done. And I just think that the flood control district did not have the political will, quite frankly, of the commissioners that were here. There was not the political will. And that's why these elections matter. And we need to continue to keep the progress and continue to move in the direction that we are.
Morgan, I'm not sure we are going to get to your question because we're almost out of time, but I will follow up with Kristen and let you know the answer to that one. John, you had your hand up to ask a question. Did you want to do so now as our last question? I think John has stepped away. Morgan, you are in luck. So Morgan's question was, with so much industry in your area, do you see a role to enable decarbonization in the industry, like carbon capture, pipelines and hubs, hydrogen hubs? And I'd be curious where the projects are specifically located that the county currently purchases renewable energy.
So I think there is an opportunity. In fact, we are working on developing another recapture site initiative so that we can get that funding put back into particular projects that will better benefit the community. And so that's something that we're working on. We brought on a consultant to help us think through that. They've done it at the Beaumont Port. And so we're working to try to establish the same thing here in Harris County and within the Port of Houston. And then the projects, I don't have the list in front of me, but simply to say, as I mentioned earlier, we're converting our fleets. We're working through that process as we speak. We're bringing on these consultants to guide us in a better direction so that we can have more clean energy options and purchase more than we've ever done before. And then in speaking with folks from the innovative sector, I'm looking for ways to make sure that that type of engineering is in the forefront of our thinking and our initiatives. You know, I helped to establish the first ever economic development guidelines that the county has had. And so the guidelines do provide incentive for anyone trying to make clean energy investments in our precinct or in the county. So again, we're starting at sub-level 10, I think, for Harris County. And I think we're almost at the basement. So we've got a lot of runway in front of us to get to, and I'm very, very excited about the progress we made. And I'm excited about the progress in front of us that we will be making.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think we'd like to take a picture real quick while we have you. So if everybody could turn your camera on, please. John, I'm sorry I missed you for your question. I tried to call on you earlier. Okay, let me make sure I've got the right button. All right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much for your time, Commissioner Garcia.
You're welcome. And John, again, thank you. I love the opportunity to visit with you. And guys and gals, let me just say, keep up the work that you're doing. Lift your voices, because I will tell you where my work comes from. And that is that I've always enjoyed the nature. But I remember that commercial of that Native American canoeing down that stream that was very pristine, and then all of a sudden you start to see all this trash, and he begins to cry about it. It motivated me, it touched me, and it made me understand the value in it. And so so these efforts are real. I understand them, I recognize them, I respect them. And so I do this a lot based on what seems to be common sense. But when you speak up and when you're doing the advocacy and the lobbying that you're doing, it really does give us wind in our sails to continue to do what we're doing. So we need you not behind us, we need you next to us. We need you knocking on doors, making those phone calls, sending those emails. So I appreciate Mark, that message you're leaving for Senator Cornyn. We need to continue to tenderize them because we're on the cusp of doing some great things, but we need to make sure that they continue to hear it on all fronts. So again, thank you for the opportunity. Y'all take care, guys. Y'all be safe.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
All right. So John, now we're in a time crunch here. I see that Bob has joined us. Bob Hendricks, you're out there somewhere. Thank you for joining, even though it's a bit late. We wanted to get through our monthly calling campaign, which is going to take time, and we wanted to get into our breakout sessions in preparation for our lobby day events. John, any suggestions on prioritizing what we have left here?
If everybody will pinky promise to make their call as soon as we're done here, we could just put the link there and then we can go into breakout rooms is maybe a suggestion.
I promise.
You have to do it.
I'm very sorry.
How do I do a pinky promise?
Pinky promise.
A pinky promise.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm very sorry that I had the wrong time down. John was very clear. I don't know how I flipped the number, but I regret missing very badly.
Bob, could you give us a very, very quick 2-minute update? But we're in a time crunch here.
No, I understand. If you want a 2-minute, basically things look good for the Finance Committee adding the carbon price. There are oil and gas Democrats, especially in Texas and in the Senate. There's some energy people, especially Manchin, who want to cut climate stuff out of the $3.5 trillion. Since at least $1 trillion is going to get cut, where does that come? And of course, the oil and gas industry wants it cut out of clean energy. So the big challenge is getting, one of the big challenges is, the two big challenges are getting carbon fee and dividend into the Senate Finance Committee version of budget reconciliation, and then keeping it when they have to cut $1 trillion.
Well, the thing is it doesn't cost money, it actually makes money. So Manchin hadn't got an argument in that respect.
But the fee has revenues and the dividend, his revenues, and the fee is pays for it. Unfortunately, the 3.5 trillion would include the dividend payments.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Manchin doesn't want 3.5 trillion in expending, even if it's all paid for. And the dividend would be considered as some of that spending.
Isn't it also true that Manchin does not want anything that's going to aggressively go after fossil fuels?
He has said things, he's also said we have to do something about climate. So there's a lot of mixed messages because they say we have to do something about climate, but we can't do anything about clean energy. So that's a contradiction.
All right. Bob, thank you so much. If it's okay with everybody, we'll go into our breakout sessions now. Let me activate those. So just as a recap reminder, we have 2 breakout rooms created. One is if your congressman or congresswoman is a Democrat, not necessarily if you are a Democrat. The second one is if your congressman or congresswoman is a Republican, again, not if you're a Republican. And so, John, you want to give a brief overview of what we'll discuss in the breakouts?
Yes, I just put an agenda in the chat that did not come out very well formatted. I think it's good to introduce yourselves and to see who would like to be part of a lobby session in November. For Democrats, where do you think your member of Congress is on the reconciliation bill? And do you think an inclusion or exclusion of carbon pricing impacts that? For Republicans, I have 2 links that I'll try to put in that chat. First, sir, introduce and see who would like to be part of a lobby meeting. Obviously, your member of Congress is probably not going to support this bill because of all the stuff in there separate from climate. But there's a conservative climate caucus, and Randy Weber, who represents the Galveston area and is a Republican, is in there, but not Crenshaw and Nels are not. So that might be something that you guys would want to ask about in a lobby meeting. And then there's also something called the Regrow Act that is about methane emission and has conservative support. It's been introduced by Lizzie Fletcher. And so that might be something that you want to ask about if you are in a conservative district. But I think the main focus is who wants to take part in a lobby meeting that's on the call today.
All right, so I've just clicked on the button to open up the breakout rooms, and these will be self-assigned. So I believe all your names should be listed there, and you just click on which room you want to go to, and it'll take you there. And a couple of minutes before the end of our meeting, we'll close the breakout rooms. We'll come back here just for a very, very quick wrap up.
Joe, where is the list?
If you don't see it on your screen, you may have to click on the button for breakout rooms.
Okay. Got it.
Whenever I click on the list,
All I can
oh, there we go.
my
Got it.
congressman is tell which is Republican and which is Democrat.
I'm sorry, Judy, could you repeat that?
All I see on the label is my congressman is 3 dots for both ones, so I don't know which one
Oh,
to
okay.
click.
Let me move you into the room. Who was your congressman?
Crenshaw.
Okay, so he's a Republican. So I'll assign you
Right.
to the Republican room then.
All right, thank you.
Here you go. And Jim Tucker, you're left, and you're in Crenshaw's district, correct?
Correct. I thought I had selected that, but it didn't move me there.
Let me assign you right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now.